Okay, so I've recently been sent a 64 megapixel autofocus Raspberry Pi camera, and this is from ArduCam. You can see the box here. All it comes with is just the cable that fits into a Pi 4. You can see it in the Pi 4 connection, and it also comes with a little camera guard as well. The great thing about it as well is it comes apart and it's the same size as the camera V2, so you can use it with all sorts of existing Raspberry Pi projects, but get much better quality. So the last video I did on Raspberry Pi was this one here, and basically I made a camera out of a portable screen and played around with it, but it was incredibly fiddly to use, and I also didn't have a setting where it would save the picture as an individual. I've now got Cheese, which is another way of taking photos, a bit like an Android app and works really well, but it doesn't work with the autofocus. So I had to work out a way of getting it to autofocus, but also every time you took a photo, it would save that photo as an individual file, because in this video, I had to rename the files on a touchscreen device and it was awful. So here I am out and about taking a picture, and you can see how fiddly it was. It was a nightmare, and really tricky to do. And also I had a separate power bank and all sorts of things. It just wasn't a good experience. But this is going to be a bit different because I've worked out a way of taking a photo where it actually saves the photo. I did have a device back in the day in one of the comments, but that didn't work. It seems like it's changed now, and so let's show you how I do it now. So this was what I was using just now: libcamera -still, continue autofocus, and there's a timer, so basically it will do it for a certain amount of time. But here I've got take a full quality autofocus photo without overwrite. So let's try that. The weird thing about it is though, it doesn't take it like a camera takes it. It's not a case of push the shutter and it takes the picture. It doesn't really give you an indication of exactly when it does it. I'm sure there's a way around it, but a lot of this would be a sort of automated process where you know, a machine or a task is taking a photo. That's kind of a lot of the point on a Raspberry Pi. So let's copy that and let's open a terminal, Control-Alt-T, and let's paste it in. So that, if I hit enter now, that's going to take a photo. So I'm going to stay still and see what it does. So it's focusing on me. Try not to blink. Okay, so at some point that took the photo, but I didn't really know when it was. You can see here, still capture image received. And if we go back to that, so this was the bit, -- timestamp creates another timestamp when it writes the file, and it doesn't overwrite a previous file, and autofocus is on. So let's go into my folders and go to Home and Pi, and it must be this photo. So this is the photo that it's just taken. Not the best of photos, not the best of angles, but I'm going to go outside again. I'm not going to do it as a comparison. I'm just going to take a load of photos with it and see what it looks like, because from what I've seen so far, even last night when I was messing around with it and the light wasn't very good at all, the level of detail was really impressive. And to take my photos, I'm going to use my Raspad 3, which is a 10-inch Raspberry Pi tablet. I'm just charging it up at the moment. I've already plugged in the camera cable, but I'll take it apart and I'll show you exactly how you get that in there. So let's unplug it first before we start unscrewing things. Right, so that's all able to come apart now. So I should be able to lift it up. Comes apart pretty nicely. That's the inside of the Raspad casing. So as we can see in here, here is the camera cable. This is the one that came with my camera V2, and so you're just slotting it in and locking that down. Actually, that could have been locked down better. It's quite hard with the heatsink, but once it's in there, you can pop the lid on, and then I'll be able to attach the other camera. So let's do that. But before I do that, while I'm still in Linux, let's just show you Cheese, which is, well, it's a shame that this doesn't work with the autofocus because it'd be great. I can hear the camera when it starts up, it clicks as if it's focusing, but it doesn't seem to autofocus after that. And I've tried, well, if I close this down and I try it with an object in front of it, so I put an object in front of it, close it down, and then launch Cheese. So it sounds like the camera is trying to autofocus, but it doesn't actually autofocus. So it still says that this fixed focus, which is fine for just a basic photo, and most things will look absolutely fine on it. You know, I guess it's like a fixed focus mode. But if I hit this button, that will take a photo in 3 seconds. There you go, terrible photo. But you can view that photo just by double clicking on it, and you can see that it comes up straight away. I played around with resolution, and if you leave it on the highest resolution, which is really high, 7680 by 4320, so that's the 64 megapixel, doesn't work. I could get it to work on this, which is around about 4K resolution, but it was a stretched image. When it takes the photo, it doesn't actually take the photo properly. If I do photo now and look at the camera, so if I click on it to view it, yeah, it comes out in some weird stretch format. So 1920 by 1080 in cheese. I didn't expect it to work because I read loads of things about the camera V2 not working with cheese. And so, yeah, I was quite surprised that it did work. Maybe it's the new Bullseye drivers that came out more recently. So I'll leave that on 1920 by 1080. I can use that. If I put it on video, it tends to fail. So you can see it's on video mode, and I last had it on 720, and I did a recording in it, and it failed. So I don't know if it's a short recording, it might be all right. So if I stop that, oh, we might be all right this time. And I found if I clicked on photo, it put the video file down the bottom here. So let's see if that will play this time. It'll only be a very short video if it plays anything at all. No, it seems to hold it as a still. I did try going for longer, but it needed to be forced quit. So let's close that down. And I need to detach the camera from this board. Let's just unscrew it from here first of all. I just need to unscrew these 4 screws here. So now this just attaches in the other way. So I need to remember the blue side is the back of the camera. It's really tight. Yeah, there we go. So that'll be quite nice in the middle because it will keep the cable nice and tight. It's only a temporary thing. To say it's upside down, but never mind. Yeah, that's not going to go anywhere. I'm happy with that. So I booted up the Pi, and unfortunately the camera wasn't working. And I think it was to do with the clip. I've managed to break the clip now, and it was because it was very fiddly with the heatsink in the way to be able to get the cable in and out, and I was trying to pull the clip off and I managed to just snap it. I think it will probably still sandwich it in enough to be able to use it, but yeah, that's a bit of a setback. Yeah, it seems to be holding it in place without that end clip, so it's pretty tight in there, so let's give that a go. Okay, so eventually I got it working, and I was using, well, a weird system actually. So the on-screen keyboard doesn't have cursors on, and there is a way of changing the XML file to be able to do it, but I was running out of time because the first Pi just didn't work. I just couldn't get it to work. I ended up swapping out for another Pi 4 after I'd done updates and all sorts of things, but this works absolutely fine. So my process was to open a terminal, and then on this mouse and keyboard I would press up and then press OK, and that would take a photo. But have a look at what happens. The photo is in the wrong orientation. Even though the camera looks like it's upside down, for some reason it was taking it like that. And as you move, it was moving in opposite directions. So if I turn this around, my logic would be that I could have probably just flipped the tablet upside down and been able to use it normally. Unfortunately, that didn't work. I tried to rotate the screen, but that meant that the touchscreen didn't work. So in the end, the way I was taking photos was press up and then press OK. But as you'll see, if I move left, the camera moves up. If I move right, the camera is down. If I move up, and also it takes quite a while to take the photo. But I've got a load of photos, and obviously there's other ways of doing this, but it was just my sort of makeshift way, which I thought was going to be really good, was quite tricky. One thing I meant to mention, the battery life's really good. So I've been using this for quite some time, taking photos, loads of photos, walking around town, and it's lasted for ages. But it is a weird looking camera. Obviously people seeing me like this taking photos, but also holding it for about 10-15 seconds, not quite knowing when the photo was going to be taken, so trying to be absolutely still. Okay, so I switched over to my iPad for this bit, just because it's easier to zoom in and zoom out and get better detail. So this was obviously one of the ones that I did earlier on when testing the camera, and then I went outside and got some really good results really. So certainly when you have a look at the images and zoom into the images, there's pretty good detail on there, and especially on some of the later ones. So this was a bit more of a close-up, and you can see a bit of depth of field on the far right-hand corner there. And if we zoom in, there's some pretty good details on the flowers. Obviously, because we've got a 64 megapixel image, we have the ability to crop the image and still keep a lot of pixels, which still keeps it looking pretty decent. So you can see here on these little plants, nice level of detail there. It really has captured it. And I think all of these pictures overall look really natural. So yeah, this one looks really nice. The fact that certain things are nice and sharp in focus and really highlighted from that. And then the blurriness of the background there, I was pretty impressed with that one. This was just some scratch card on the ground, but if you zoom in you can see that you can get quite a good level of detail. And I didn't check to see if it was a winner, but I figured as someone's thrown it away, it's unlikely to be. Yeah, the level of detail here. It didn't focus on the poppy, but obviously you can see it's nice and sharp on some of the sort of natural flowers here. This motorbike, if we have a look at the wheel, you really can go quite far in and it still keeps most of the detail. You know, even things like the detail in the background and everything was pretty good. And I think I only deleted about 2 pictures because they were blurry. So considering that when I was taking these pictures, I didn't know when the camera was taking the picture, so I was trying to stay still. I was actually quite impressed, and even things, obviously this car is moving, it's moving in a car park, so it's not going to be moving very fast. But again, yeah, level of detail looks pretty decent. You do get a bit of banding. I don't know how well it's going to pick this up in the YouTube video. On certain shots, you can see these parallel lines, these sort of orangey parallel lines. Yeah, so this was nice and sharp, and I like the way that it's picked up the grass and the detail there, or the fake grass. And yeah, I thought this sign was pretty good as well. You can really go quite far in and it not suffer too much. And this is a local bridge that's being fixed at the moment, so you can zoom in and you can read all the writing and everything. And I like the way it's dealt with this one as well. So we zoom into the museum. It's kept quite a bit of the detail. We can go right into the fields and we can start to see things like sheep in the field. And also when we go close up to the boat, you can see that level of detail. Yeah, very natural. And this one has got a load of bikes in it, so you can zoom in and see that level of detail. But overall, I think just the colour, the way that everything's quite nice and contrasty in the background. Bit of graffiti on a wall, so we can zoom into that and we can have a look round and see that, yeah, it again benefits from having those 64 million pixels. And nice and blurry in the background there and nice and sharp on the wall. So I thought all the grass and everything looked decent here, but also in the distance it's reasonably sharp on some of these buildings. So you can see the clock tower there, the museum, the bridge buildings. It's done pretty well. This was one to have cars moving, so all of these cars would be moving, and you can see that it's captured them really quite still. So it's quite a fast camera. Again, the clock tower, I think the way it's dealt with things like the shading and the tree and everything looks really nice. And we can see there's quite a decent level of detail there. Again, we've got these horizontal banding only when you go in really close. You don't tend to notice it on the picture, but when you go in really close, you can see it. Now, whether that's something to do with my setup, I'm not sure. Well, you could see what I was using to take the photos just through terminal. Here's one of our phone boxes. Surprising to me, I didn't think they had phones in still, but this one has got a phone in it. But if we zoom into the sign here, you can see that sign on the wall and everything. And this is inside the phone box, so we can go really quite close and we can see that, again, it's pretty focused. I am again getting those banding, only when you zoom in really far, but it's definitely there. And there's me taking the picture. If I zoom into this one, you can see the reflection, but again, you know, really nice colour, really nice and natural, looking pretty decent. This is a great one. This is a local record shot. I don't know why there's a gas canister outside, but if we zoom into the window, we really can read all of the signs and we have all of the detail there, and it copes with it really well. Look. So you can see the DVDs in the window and various different things there. But yeah, I was impressed with that one. Just the fact that you can zoom in so much and it's still all readable. I thought the flags looked pretty decent. I really like the contrast in that. Again though, those lines are on the green. You can see it on that green door there. Even on the standard, so we go to that one, yeah, you can still pick it up on that. So I'm not sure what that is. Is that the camera being too close to the back of the Raspad? Maybe it needs to be separated. Oh, and something I noticed on my iPad, sometimes you get this little, see top right, there's an eye, and it actually lets you look things up, look up the landmark. It doesn't tell you what camera takes the picture, no lens information, but it can tell me that it's 64 megapixel, 9152 by 6944, 12.5 megabytes, ISO 100. A bit more of the clock tower, a bit more of the flowers and things. Again, I think it's dealt with that really nicely. I quite like the museum in the background there poking through. Bit more movement, so there's some cars and there's a bus that's just gone on the right hand side there. I thought this was good. So you can see the shop, so going through the window, the reflection deals with that quite nicely. You can see the sign is really detailed, and all of these restaurants and things down this street. Thought this one came out really nicely. So this is the Pannier Market in Barnstable, and yeah, the colours and also the shading and everything. It wasn't really bright in there, but I thought the camera brightened it up really nicely without looking artificial and without having too much grain in the dark scenes. I think that it copes with that really quite well. Here's an old post box, and obviously there's quite a lot of graduation in light, so in the background you can see the buildings are much brighter, but we've got the shade from the tree and the car and everything. But yeah, everything looks pretty decent. Not the most attractive of post boxes. A couple of telephone boxes, so you can see, yeah, again, details are nice. The long bridge in the background there and the fields and everything. Quite like that one, shows a bit of depth on it. And this is the Longbridge sign, and what's funny is that you can select text on these now. So you can look up and translate and various things like that, but this bridge was originally built in the 13th century. And you can see, again, all the details on the little bits of leaves and rubbish and all sorts of things around there. So really impressed with that, really good results. I'm not quite sure why it doesn't work with this Pi 4. Must be something wrong with that camera connection. Because I've also plugged it into my Pi 4 8 gig and it's working absolutely fine in that. You can see I've got it wired in a little bit differently, and I'm using a Gorilla Pod to hold it in place. So regarding the installation of the camera, I had the PDF file and it all worked, but there was a few things I got stuck on and I can't remember what they were. So what I did was I followed the procedure that I did to install it. So copy and paste each one of these lines into terminal and hit enter. At some points it sometimes will say to reboot, and let it reboot. And then you need this bit, sudo nano boot config.txt. So if you copy that in, and that will give you this screen, and then you're adding a line. So the line that you're adding is this one, dtoverlay was vc4-kms. And you can see I've got it here as well, ending in CDMA 512. This line was added by the installation script, so you don't need to worry about that. And then to save that, just hit Control X and yes and enter. And then once you've done that, still in the terminal, we can try this, which is a little bit of a test script. This is autofocus that stays on. So if I paste that in, you can see that it will think about it and then it will autofocus. There you go. And then lock in. And you can close that down by closing down the terminal. So this was the script that I was using to take photos. So if I copy that and paste that into terminal, you can see that it will do a preview and then it will take a photo. And then when the screen goes out, you know it's taken a photo, and it will store that photo in Home Pi, which is what I covered earlier on. And it will be, this one will be the latest one, hopefully. Yeah, that was the latest photo. So this one does exactly the same thing, but you don't get a preview, so it doesn't show you a video screen. If you're not looking at the screen, there's no reason for it to show a preview, so it might speed the process up. Then there was the manual focus bit. So this is installed by just basically copying these 3 lines into terminal, then you need to navigate to the folder that it's in. So this bit here, home pi. So if I copy that, you can get there by manually doing it, or you can copy and paste it into here and hit return. And then when you're on this, just press F4 and that will open up that location in a terminal. And then we've got a bit of Python script to run, and it's this bit here. And this is about manually controlling the focus. So we copy that and paste that in. So now what you need to do is open up a camera separately. So we can do Ctrl-Alt-T to open another terminal. So let's paste that in. So now we've got our picture, but it's not on autofocus, but I can focus it manually. So I think it's the up and down arrows. So click on the right hand window and then press up or down, and you can see, yeah, so it's focusing on the SSD drive, but I'm out of focus. But then if I want to be in focus but the SSD drive goes out of focus, then I can do that manually. And you can also type in a number if you know the number, although that's a bit keen. But obviously if you were setting it to do a Python script to be able to focus on something, take a photo and then focus on something else, there's another bit which is where you can actually move around. So say you had the camera pointed at a particular scene, you could pick out part of that scene and zoom into it. So let's show you how that works. We can open up a terminal and copy this line in. And you can see my Pi is here. If I want to zoom into that, I can click on this terminal and you're just putting letters in to move it around. So W is zoom, but then I can use L and J to move it around. So that's fairly central. I can use K to move it down a bit, and you can see that's pretty good. And I can keep zooming in with W. And yeah, pretty detailed. So you can do this with anything the camera is looking at. If you imagine something like a 3D printer, you can zoom in and you can see the progress in much more detail. I was thinking I would try this camera with my 3D printer because actually it works really well in a dimly lit room, and the camera V2 doesn't work that well in a dimly lit room. Anyway, I think that's probably enough for this camera. I am very impressed with it. I really do like it, and I look to be using it in future projects. Hope all this helps. Thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe.